Hi, everyone. Can you hear me loud and clear? Okay, very good. So our session is aspirationally titled Connect Anything, Achieve Anything, and Transform Your Enterprise. Hopefully, by the end of the session, we will have shown you some of the architecture patterns to connect SAP systems to Microsoft Azure services. I'm Anirban, and this is Siva.
Hi, everyone.
I head the office of the CTO at SAP, where we build reference architectures with SAP services as well as our partner services like Microsoft Azure. Siva, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So I'm part of the office of the CTO as well. I focus on the architecture around data and AI.
Fantastic. So over the next 20 minutes or so, I will walk you through our partnership, three of the core ingredients of our technology pillar, the Business Technology Platform, Business Data Cloud, and Business AI. I will also talk about some of the reference architecture patterns. And one of the key takeaways for this session, we are going to demonstrate SAP Architecture Center, which we recently launched at SAP's technology event called TechEd a couple of weeks back in Berlin, which will give you the opportunity to browse some of these reference architectures as well as contribute to them. So SAP's partnership with Microsoft is not really new. It extends to 20, 30 years back, and we have been collaborating over a number of technology components starting from the NetWeaver days. But the point in time where Siva and I got engaged in the engineering partnership or the architecture partnership was really around the pre-COVID times, where we relaunched the partnership around Microsoft Teams integration. And here you see quotes from our CEO, Christian Klein, and Satya Nadella, expressing their joint intent to essentially bring the Microsoft Teams experience to SAP technology portfolio. Since then, of course, over the last 5 years or so, we have co-innovated on a number of things. We have had very large HANA Cloud instances certified to run on Microsoft Azure. We have Business Technology Platform, which is our core platform pillar, running on different Microsoft Azure instances. We have also done a lot of architecture work around getting some of the fundamentals or non-functional requirements right. For instance, security integration between Entra ID as well as SAP Identity Authentication Service, connecting SAP systems via S/4HANA systems running on Microsoft Azure through private links, so on and so forth. Many of these architectures are available on SAP Architecture Center that I will walk you through. But before I go there, I think it's important to walk you through the core components of SAP's technology strategy, which can be subdivided into the following three parts. Right? So we are predominantly a business software application company, and we have business application software covering all domains of ERP, HR, manufacturing, finance, travel, expense. So this is depicted in the lowest layer called the SAP applications. Two of the recent innovations that we have launched, the first one being Business Data Cloud, which actually defines a new paradigm of data engineering through the lakehouse architecture, and it builds on the concept of data products. That is something that Siva will talk about. And on top, the Business AI Foundation, which started off with our co-pilot called Joule, and that portfolio has expanded to Joule agents that offer both kind of an embedded AI experience of agents running with our business applications, as well as pro-code agents or custom agents that you can create in order to connect your business outcomes with SAP business processes. The part that I'm going to focus on now is really the Business Technology Platform, because that forms the fundamental basis of how we build and engineer our solutions. So typically, Business Technology Platform is an opinionated platform as a service component that offers you some of the fundamental capabilities of application development. So we offer environments like cloud application programming, if you have experience building applications or CAP applications using Java or JavaScript on BTP. You can extend S4 business processes there. data analytics portfolio, which Siva will talk about, comprising aspects such as Business Data Cloud, but also our Analytics Cloud integration, which is a significant chunk of portfolio to integrate SAP to SAP as well as SAP to non-SAP systems. And lastly, artificial intelligence. So Joule and the agent runtime also runs on Business Technology Platform. But Business Technology Platform in itself is built on some of the core open source fundamentals. For instance, the Cloud Foundry layer, the Kubernetes layer, and a bunch of other open source technologies that we not just consume, but also we contribute back to the ecosystem. For instance, we are part of CNCF Foundation, we are part of Linux Foundation, where we actively, along with Microsoft, work on these technologies, ranging from Kubernetes to even things like cloud events, so on and so forth. The fundamental layers and some of the core technical services of the Business Technology Platform are also sourced from the underlying hyperscaler technology. And since Business Technology Platform runs on Microsoft Azure, many of our core technical services, starting from Object Store to Postgres to cache databases, for instance, Redis, are of course sourced from Microsoft Azure as a core infrastructure layer. Now, to understand how business technology runs on Microsoft Azure, I will just spend a couple of slides. I mean, first of all, since the announcement 4 or 5 years back around Teams integration, Business Technology Platform really has expanded its footprint and now is available across 10 different Azure regions. Very recently, we also launched Azure regions in South America, in Canada, in places like Switzerland for EU access. But also what is interesting and exciting is that BTP is also available for purchase on Microsoft Azure Marketplace. So that's a very recent development where you can actually use up your Microsoft Azure credits to consume BTP services. If you're interested in this particular capability, there's a link provided on this slide which you can browse and explore later. So double-clicking, slowly going into the architecture layers, it is important to spend maybe 5 minutes to explain how BTP runs on Microsoft Azure, because that will be the basis of some of the architecture patterns that I will talk about. So just like any infrastructure provider, Microsoft Azure, amongst the 200+ services that it provides, offers 3 primary API abstractions: compute, network, and storage, right? So BTP, when it runs all its services, also uses these kind of 3 API abstractions. So BTP, being a tenant-aware PaaS component, essentially carves out a network space. Think about a VNet space in the Azure network. And then the first things that get deployed on the Azure network would be the platform foundation. We use SAP Gardener as a Kubernetes underlay. And some of you may ask, why don't we use AKS or EKS or GKE or any other kind of Kubernetes runtime? It's because many of our stateful services, and if you've heard of services like SAP HANA or Integration Suite, they need to call specific Kubernetes APIs for scale-out and operations, which is why we have designed our own control plane called SAP Gardener and have open source in the community so that we can run our services in a common, harmonized way on this platform layer, as well as even run some of the services on bare metal instances. So once the Kubernetes underlay with SAP Gardener is laid out, the different platform runtime components like Cloud Foundry, Kima, ABAP runtime, if you have heard of Steampunk, for instance, get deployed. There is, like the Linux operating system, there are some kernel services, and we also internally call those kernel services, things like identity service, autoscaler, alert notification. A bunch of these services are baked into this foundation layer so that all other services can reuse them when they get deployed on the platform. The next comes the different product teams who deploy their own services, ranging from integration to app development to the business data cloud, and then AI. Many of these teams can pick and choose their own services. Some of them could be running on Cloud Foundry. Some of them could be running on bare metal SAP Gartner infrastructure. But there's one thing common amongst all of these services, that they will reuse many of these kernel services. So they will all use SAP Identity and Authentication Service, for instance, so that when you hit kind of an endpoint from an outside world into that SAP ecosystem, then the calls will all be authenticated and routed via the identity and authentication layer. So if you are deploying S/4HANA Private Cloud Edition on Azure infrastructure, you might wonder, and we get customer requests, so can you just peer our VNets together? Well, this is not going to be possible because BTP, being a tenant-isolated platform instance, run in its own tenant-aware Cedar Range network zone. So the way you essentially would extend S4 processes running in its own VNet would be to set up something like a cloud connector as a reverse proxy so that you open a tunnel from the S4 instance into the BTP instance and then build your application on BTP. But SAP cloud applications or SaaS applications are a bit different, right? So they may or may not even run on the same infrastructure or even the same infrastructure provider, right? For instance, SAP Concur or Ariba or SuccessFactors may run in the same region on Microsoft Azure, or they may run in a different region, or they may run on a different infrastructure provider. So from a BTP standpoint, in order to access and extend some of these business processes, you would just have access to the APIs of the SaaS business application. Now, if I were talking about or giving an architecture talk about SAP BTP 3-4 years back, I would have stopped here. But since our partnership with Microsoft, this extends to the ecosystem of Microsoft Azure services, right? So as I mentioned in my previous slide, we do reuse a lot of Microsoft Azure services within BTP, and the list is growing. But you may wonder that with 200 plus Microsoft Azure services, as well as 67 BTP services that run on Azure, how do we actually create outcomes or integration scenario? Because the cross product of 200 Azure services and 67 BTP services is huge. Customers may not need all possible integrations with all possible service combination, which is why with our engineering colleagues from Microsoft, we have categorized essentially integration patterns into 3 domains: foundational layers that talk about things like non-functional requirements. How do we have single sign-on between IIS and Entra ID, for instance? Or how do we set up HADR scenarios with the help of Microsoft services? The second category is service integration, where we talk about API and event-based integration between Microsoft and SAP ecosystem. We have designed Teams integration scenario or IoT integration scenario, which are released on the Architecture Center. And the last category, AI and data, where we hear from customers who have data footprint on both Microsoft as well as SAP environment, and they want to blend the data, which is why we have come up with different architecture patterns to blend and move the data across the 2 ecosystems, and once that's there, actually build agents or AI outcomes based on the data. Before I go into the Architecture Center, I just want to show you kind of 3 architecture patterns. I wouldn't go into the details of this architecture patterns or explain so, but if you are an SAP practitioner and have built CAP applications to extend business processes, then you might be familiar with these kind of architectures. In SAP terminology, we use TAM, or Technical Architecture Modeling, which is kind of a derivative of the TOGAF architecture framework, to build diagrams. The diagrams that you see on Architecture Center are solution diagrams that look like this. And they are essentially depicting BTP in a box and then BTP sub-account. And this is a classical architecture which shows that in cases where your S/4HANA instance is running on Microsoft Azure, How can you set up a private link so that you don't have to go through the complexity of setting up a reverse proxy using Cloud Connector, and instead from your CAP application on BTP, you can connect to S4 endpoints using private IP range, right, with Microsoft Private Link. And once you have built these kind of 101 basic architectures, one JavaScript or Java application on BTP, that extends the business process of S4HANA that might be running in a Microsoft Azure instance, then you can actually build on top of it and build more complex architecture. This is a classic case of the type 2 reference architecture that we built, for instance, for, again, a CAP application, but this time it is coupled with eventing paradigms so that it can connect to Microsoft Azure IoT services, and IoT services, Microsoft Azure IoT services could be ingesting a bunch of time series data, and this time series data would be marshaled and harmonized in the BTP layer, and finally be creating transactions in the S4 system. And these architectures, when I show you the corresponding entries on the Architecture Center, there are GitHub samples for this code, which you can replicate and try it on your own. The last kind of pattern, which is going into the level 3 kind of complexity, is HADR pattern. Again, you don't have to read through all the boxes, but to explain the general rationale of why an HADR pattern is necessary and how we are working with Microsoft to build up these patterns. So imagine 2 BTP instances, one in US East Coast and the other in US West Coast, running a bunch of BTP services. It could be integration suite, it could be CAP applications. And then if you are a retailer, during the Black Friday traffic pattern, you need to load balance the traffic across services of both these regions. So in cases like that, we have used Azure Traffic Manager in front as a load balancing layer, which essentially routes the traffic based on different routing patterns to different BTP regions. Although the concept seems simple, there are many edge cases. For instance, what happens when the threshold exceeds a certain limit, or when you have to meet certain latency requirements, which is why we have worked with our Microsoft colleagues and built patterns and engineering different outcomes so that the load is evenly distributed across 2 different regions. So before handing over to Siva for the remainder of 25 minutes, I'll just quickly show you Architecture Center and how it looks like. So hopefully you can see my browser. Okay, so this is Architecture Center. It is hosted on learning.sap.com. If you go to learning.sap.com, then you can browse through different courses and different accreditations. For instance, if you're an SAP practitioner, you can get certified on building applications or CAP applications, or practicing your skill set on Business Data Cloud. In the Architecture Center, however, it is an open source platform, as I mentioned, where you can browse different architecture patterns. So some of the architecture patterns that I mentioned, for instance, architecting, is the font readable from the back? Is it, can you see the browser clearly? Okay. So architecting multi-region patterns. So exactly the third pattern that I showed, you can find these architectures on Architecture Center. The interesting thing is that everything is based on GitHub, right? So for each of the architectures, there's a corresponding GitHub sample repo, and we have also open source code there. So you can clone the code, and you can also try it out. There are 2 other aspects of Architecture Center. One is that all these diagrams, if you are a customer and you want to reuse some of the diagrams for your own specific use case, you can download or you can edit, right? So we have also open sourced the entire solution diagram repository in all the icons and everything. So you can pick and choose. You can clone an architecture diagram and adjust for your landscape. And the other nice part is that you can clone and you can fork the repo and contribute back to the Architecture Center. So many of our partners, for instance, are contributing architectures back to the Architecture Center. So for instance, if you have a new use case with SAP BTP or SAP BDC or AI and Microsoft services that you have built, and you want the ecosystem and the world to know about your use case, then you can just clone this repository, and you can fork it, and then you can contribute the code back to Architecture Center. One other thing that I would like to show you is the concept of Architecture Validator. This is a work in progress, and hopefully it works. So many of these solution diagrams, and before I hand it over to Siva, maybe I'll do a quiz. How many of you have actually built a CAP application on BTP? Anyone? Have you worked with BTP or CAP applications? Okay, one person, okay. Then I'm showing this very simple, or maybe not so simple, architecture, and then you can tell me that if there's anything missing in this architecture diagram. Okay, no response. So I'll try to upload this diagram in the validator and try to validate and see if it works and comes back with a response. But what is happening in the background is essentially we build a knowledge graph out of this drawer diagram. So if I go to essentially this drawer diagram, it is nothing but kind of an XML file with nodes and vertices, right? And you can represent the nodes and vertices in the form of an ontology, a knowledge graph with relationship between nodes and vertices. So we have converted the solution diagrams into these knowledge graph representations, simplistic with HANA Cloud knowledge graph engine, and then running through the large language models with some extended and sophisticated prompts to actually do two kinds of check, one syntactic check and the other is semantic check. So it comes back with a response, for instance, that there is no security, there is no IIS provider depicted in the diagram. Then there are other checks, for instance, formatting issues. You're missing a destination service. So if you're connecting to an S4 system and you have set up your reverse proxy with Cloud Connector, then you need to have a corresponding entity or service in BTP called a destination service that mirrors that connection, and the destination service was missing in the diagram. So what you can do actually is when you build architectures for your customers or for your own IT landscape, you can validate some of these architectures using the validator tool and give us feedback if it's working for you or not. So with that, let me wrap up. You can browse more architectures and you'll get all the links, and then pass it over to Siva for the remainder of the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Anirban. So let's talk about a little bit on the Business Data Cloud. I don't have to tell you how important is data for your enterprises. But there are some challenges in the current landscape of how data is accessed from the SAP system. If you look at what's there on the left side over here, you have your SAP applications, you have your BW systems, you have your data lakes in Azure and Databricks and other places, and you also have SAP data being copied over to different relational databases and so on for different processing. And every single place where you actually store the data, you're going to manage a pipeline, which is going to cost you not just from a compute and storage perspective, but also from managing those pipelines and making sure it's running. And if something is broken, you got to go reload and make sure data is not corrupt. And all of the process and the tax that comes along with it is your responsibility, right? So what we are trying to address here with Business Data Cloud is let SAP take care of all that heavy lifting in terms of preparing your data and giving you in a much cleaner way so that it's ready to consume in the form of data products, right? So you would have your data coming in from your SAP system. SAP cleans it up, prepares it, and everything is done by SAP. And in this Business Data Cloud, that data would be put as data products. Your data, accessible only for you, would be available. And it includes your S4 systems, your LOB applications like SuccessFactors and Concur and Ariba and CX and everything. So you would be able to access all of that right from within Business Data Cloud. You not only are eliminating all the unnecessary overheads of the data flows and pipelines that you are managing today, you're also bringing in your data to the cloud that it's instantly accessible to everybody. Last but not least, you're also harmonizing all the schemas so that as supplier that you are bringing in from your source system, no matter which other system is referring to, there is a harmonized way of referring to that supplier object, for example. So a lot more happening with the BDC. It eliminates your pipelines, harmonizes your data and schema from all the LOB applications plus S4, and brings and modernizes your data to cloud as well. But it doesn't stop there. You have your data accessed in the object store layer of your BDC, but we know that you want to access that data in your other systems as well. For example, if you have Databricks, you may want to use that data for your machine learning activity or for other applications or other use cases that you are running on Databricks. And we know that if you have Azure, Microsoft Data Fabric or Azure Synapse or any of the Microsoft tools, you want that data to be available there as well. So that's why we have enabled zero copy access via Delta sharing protocol, that you would be able to access this prepared data and you will have full control on which system and who gets access, but you would be able to access and expose this to all the downstream activities, be it any system that you are interested in. So this is really powerful, but we have done much more than that as well. So this morning we announced the availability of this connector for Fabric as well. So this will be available around summer. But let me double click a little bit on the BDC as well, right? If you have already invested on DataSphere, right, you would be able to reuse all of that investments within data BDC. And if you have your BW instances, you would be able to bring that onto the cloud environment as well. And we will also be able to provision a SAP Databricks instance right from within BDC. And on top of all of that, you have your intelligent apps provided and built and provided by SAP as well, right? So how does it work? You see all the SAP systems onto your left, and you see a line coming there from the object store. That's the preparation that SAP takes care. It brings all your data and puts it in the object store that SAP manages in the form of data product. Second, if you ever want to modify that data product to your use case, you want to mix and match with a couple of things, then you would be able to kind of create a custom data product and you'd be able to store it in the object store. The object store, we store it in the Delta Lake format, so it is fully accessible across all the systems and everything, right? So let me quickly jump into the system and then show you a quick demo of how easy it is to actually access the data products. So I am here in BDC. So here I have my catalog. So what I have done already is to this Business Data Cloud instance, I have connected my SAP system, and I also have connected my SAP Databricks instance. If you have your own Databricks instance that is already available, you would also be able to bring that into the formation and connect it to the BDC as well. So I have, when I go to the catalog, I already have a lot of data products. So let me just clear this out and show you all the data products. So SAP has released hundreds of data products that are already available today, and you can, and we are adding more as we speak. So you would be able to browse all the data products that are available today, and you see some of these are inactive. So you have control on what data you want to bring in from your SAP system into the object store. So that's the first thing, right? But if you have already activated some of the data products, I'm just going to pick the supplier data product over here, and then you see I have already activated this data product, and I want to double click a little bit into it and show what is what it actually has. So while it's loading, so you could see that it is not just one table or anything. It is a combination of multiple entity types. So you have the supplier, you have the supplier account group, account code. So it brings in everything that it needs to have to provide a meaningful data. So here, let me zoom in a little bit. It may be a little hard for you to see. So here you could see it is not just a single table that it is bringing over here. It connects and joins everything and all the related tables and gives you as one entity set that you would be able to use it. So this is just one simple example. And like I said, it constantly brings in data from SAP system onto the object store. Okay, this is great. You have data now in BDC. You can use it in your SAC. You can use it in your DataSphere. You can use it in Intelligence app. But how do I now expose this and consume it in, let's say, Databricks? So I just go here to the Share button, and then here I will be able to see all the systems that I'm connected to, right? So here I have Databricks that I have already connected, and I have already shared this supplier data product in Databricks. Let's quickly get into the Databricks system and see. So here, when I go into the catalog of the Databricks, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So when I go into the catalog of the Databricks, I will be able to see under the Delta Share received, I will be able to see the same supplier data product that I have shared. When I click it, I would be able to see all the metadata and the lineage that SAP has shared along with the data. Now, how does the query look? It's pretty straightforward. You just come here, just like any other table. You just treat that as a table and then run a query within your Databricks environment. So it's just starting. I think the serverless compute just stopped. It's starting again the compute, but you could see that it is coming back with the data all the way from your object store sitting in your system. So this is really powerful. It takes away all the complexities and gets you access to the systems, access to your data instantly. Now, like I said, this is also coming to your Microsoft Fabric in summer. If you need more details, please drop by our booth to get more details around it, right? So how are customers using it? So Baker Hughes is one of our customers who is currently using our DataSphere and BDC, and they are able to kind of cut down a huge amount of manual tasks that they have to get involved in moving the data from their SAP system. So they were able to kind of bring that data movement from 31 days to under a day from their SAP system onto their Azure systems. So this is really, really powerful, and customers are really taking advantage. So I would highly recommend you to give it a shot. Like I said, you'll be able to bring in all your existing investments into BW, DataSphere, SAC, all into it. So this is a really powerful tool. Now, you have data, right? You want the data to be available in the AI as well. So how do we do that? So let me first double click on SAP's business AI strategy, right? So you probably all heard about Joule, our AI copilot that actually connects to all your SAP systems, be it S4, your SuccessFactors, and provides answers and transactional information grounded within your data set, right? So it is available you can converse with it in multiple languages. You'd be able to kind of, get different patterns. You'd be able to ask analytical questions. You can ask it to take you to a specific object. You could also ask it to kind of approve or start an approval process and make it more transactional as well. So you have multiple options. And we also have built over 40 agents as of today that are available out of the box. There are many, many more that are going to come in the next weeks and months. And you would be able to use this and start using this right away. So for example, account receivable agents is one such agent. You would be able to directly use that and understand what's going on with your receivables. Last but not least, you'd also be able to extend any of the agents that SAP provides. We understand you would have customized, you would have configured your financial system to fit your business needs, but then you also be able to enhance your agents to fit your needs as well. But there are two more out-of-the-box agents that I'm really excited about. One, Joule for Consultant. I come from SAP's SD background, sales and distribution. I know very little about the financials. So what it really helps me is if I have something that I want to know about the financial system of my SAP and how it is configured, how my IMG looks, how my system is connected with other different systems, all of that, your SAP Joule Consultant would be able to answer, guide you step by step on how you want to kind of modify it, and helps you kind of do those modifications. The second one, which is even more awesome, is the Joule for developers. You know, some of you probably work in our ABAP landscape, so you would be able to generate ABAP code directly from within our Joule for developers. You can just give it like any other tool that generates code for you. You would be able to kind of give it input. But what it does is it not only understands SAP's ABAP syntax, but also understands your system landscape, your tables, your function modules, your enhancements, and you'll be able to generate ABAP code for to support your clean code strategy as well. So this is already fully loaded with functionality, but you're just barely scratching the surface here, right? So I'm not going to ask you what an AA agent is. Probably all of you know by now what an AA agent is, but I wanted to talk about what SAP is actually doing. So like with every agent, we have the planning, the reflection, the tool usage, and the collaboration across agents. But what we wanted to actually focus on is ground that in your business context, right? So you would be able to leverage that directly from connecting that to your business data cloud. So you have all your data products, all your data sitting in business data cloud instantly available. You have the knowledge graph, which actually understands your process and the methodology and everything connected together, so that when you ask a question, it doesn't give a generic answer about your account payable and receivable, but understands how it actually configured in your system, so it gives you relevant answers. At the same time, you also have our AA Core, which provides you a catalog of LLMs that you would be able to use for building agents. So you have all these different tools that comes together that helps you build custom agents if you want to kind of go ahead and build it for your SAP processes. So this is really powerful. But what about the agents that sits outside SAP? How do you connect to that, right? So we have partnership with Microsoft AI Foundry, so we can connect to any agent that you have created in the AI Foundry. Joule can reach out to those agents via A2A protocol. So we are a partner in the A2A steering committee. So we, along with all the leading providers, including other hyperscalers, we are able to connect Joule with every other agent, and it also be able to reach out to SAP agents as well. So this is really powerful. You are not only going to just build agents within your environment, but you are also able to now connect to agents that are actually built outside as well. So this is not limited to just Microsoft agents. Any agent infrastructure that complies with A2A protocol, you would be able to securely connect and do a principal propagation and make sure you are getting the right access for your users as well. This is awesome, right? So we have built a really small demo here, which we call claim processing resolution agent. So the high-level use case of that is simple. You're getting a message from your customer that, look, I asked you for like 40 plus quantities of a specific product. You delivered only 30, right? So what happened to the rest? So this is a very common request that you get.
Hello.
But
In
what
this
is
demo,
actually
you will see how an
interesting
AI
is,
agent built on SAP Business Agent Foundation
I'll just pause.
resolves a delivery issue by working with other AI agents using the A2A protocol. A sales rep forwards a customer email to SAP Joule reporting 7 missing items. The claim resolution agent reads the email, understands the issue, and starts working on a resolution by reaching out to other agents. It then drafts a response email confirming a new sales order was created. We check in SAP S4HANA and there it is. The new sales order is already in place. Inside the agent builder, you can see all the agents involved. The catalog agent helped discover others using the ORD compliant agent cards, while the Azure and Google agents provided the business policies and freight info. Here's what happened behind the scenes. First, it found the right agents through the catalog agent. Then it got the policies from Azure agent, pulled the sales order details from SAP S4HANA, checked with Google agent for freight issues, and finally created the new sales order. All of this from a single email, fast, intelligent, and automated.
This is really, really, really awesome because it not only automates your process, but every place where you really want a human intervention, where you want an approval to be triggered, where you want kind of a check to be made by the user, you would be able to insert all of that right from within your agent development or Joule Studio. So how are customers using it? So Cirque du Soleil is one of our customers that has built their agents on using BTP using agent AI Core. They have actually processed the supplier invoice. So before the agent, they were actually processing these invoices manually. They created an agent that actually takes care of all of that, automates the whole process, but still with the human touch in and human in the loop. And they were able to bring down the total time that they have spent around by 25%. So all of this information that I shared with you today is already available in the Architecture Center as well, so you'd be able to go check that out as well. Last but not least, before I wrap up, we talked about the agents, we talked about the data. You would also be able to bring all of that together as well, right? So it's not in two separate worlds. You would be able to bring and consume your data products right within your agent, and you'd also be able to leverage the SAP Knowledge Graph that automatically brings in the ontology for SAP objects. So there's a lot of information that is available and tools that are available at your disposal when you wanted to build an agent. So in summary, we have Joule out-of-the-box agents that you could use for your applications. You'd be able to build your custom agents that would actually leverage your business context and grounded in your business data. And you'd also be able to extend these agents and also connect to Copilots and other Microsoft agents that you are building outside of our SAP system, right? With that, just 2 more minutes to go. I wanted to provide you with more information about where you could look for all this information about everything that Anirban talked about in terms of BTP, in terms of your clean core strategy, your business AI and business data cloud as well. And there is a reception that is happening tomorrow evening. So I'm just going to leave this QR code up there. Please do scan it, and please do drop by our booth and for our reception, and you'd be able to kind of ask all your questions answered, okay? And that's all from me, and if there are any questions, we'd be open to answering them. Yeah, no, sure.
A lot of things were cool, so.
I think it's best to come to the microphone because otherwise it won't get recorded.
So the question is, how does it work with the customization? I mean, just to give you an idea, so we have like 100,000 customization in SAP. I don't know anybody who don't have customization.
Absolutely, yeah.
So how does everything work with your data store, with your agent, with your Joule's knowledge? Because this is like a super blocker whenever I think about it in my mind, but how do you see it?
Yeah. Maybe I'll start from the data and the agents, and then I'll let Anirban answer about the custom application that you built. So if you have, let's say, we saw about the supplier data products, and if you have enhanced your suppliers, tables, or if you have built logic on top of it, that gets carried forward, right? Your transaction codes and whatever that you have on your sales order side that actually injects new business process, all of that is respected because we are not simply sucking the data from the database tables and replicating it. We actually go through your application layer, so all your enhancements, everything goes through it, including your...
Just to give you an idea, right? So we use SAP schedule agreements, and we use completely a different table for maintaining customer dates. Okay, so it's a very common thing among automotive customers, right? So how would such a scenario work?
Very good question. So if you have created a completely different table altogether, so you would be able to create what is called a derived data products that actually enhances the core object that you have actually enhanced. So the derived data products is where you would actually look at and be able to bring in your enhanced table and attach it. Let's say if you are looking at the sales order and the schedule lines table is completely different, or your ATP tables are different, whatever it be, you would be able to kind of create an enhanced version, and the pipeline still is taken care of by SAP. Now, when it comes to agents, and if your schedule is completely different, then you would be able to enhance it the way you enhanced it as well. Yeah, I see music playing, so probably I would have to stop, but we probably can take those additional questions offline. Yeah?